Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Couple of notes about how this video is going to go. One, in the past bunch of videos, you have probably noticed I haven't been wearing my glasses, or have taken them off fairly early in. Those glasses were old. They were from before I got my treatments. Shape of my skull and eyes changed as a result of radiation and stuff. These are new. So I'll be wearing them. Hopefully there's not too much glare off of them. They are also bifocals, and I am still adapting to now being a bifocal wearer. So, my eye contact is likely to be a little bit sketchy because my webcam is currently between my monitors, so I can't just put it right next to where my window is, where I can see what I look like. So I'll be glancing over here from time to time. Also, this is a top 10 video, a +1 top 10 video, so my list of stuff is also over there. So if I stop looking here, hi, and glance over a bit, it's a thing. Plus, what do you think of the new glasses? The old ones transitioned to a blue lens in the sunlight. These are gray. I couldn't get the bifocals and the blue transition, but I got bluish frames. I had Micronauts this color, so I kind of got all nostalgic, and I like them so far. Bifocals, hard to adjust. Villains. I've been asked to talk a little bit about some of the villains I have created, and I'm going to do that. But before I do that, I've talked a little bit about the basics of villains and villainy and how I do villain-based plotting. Before I launch into some of my favorite villains of my own creation, I'm going to do a +1 top 10 list of my favorite villains of other people's creations. Movies, comic books, television. There really isn't a single category the villains come from. As it so happens, they are all male. If there are any villainesses out there that would like to step up and be on a list of mine, tag me in the comments. A villain is someone who makes a protagonist's life difficult, whose evil actions and motivations further the plot of a movie or a story in literature. They're the antagonist whose evil desires and actions make things happen. I like a villain who does it with style, who does it with flair, who does it with a certain amount of proper menace. Hard to define it any further than that. Let's kick into the list, shall we? Coming in at number 10. From one of my favorite movies of all time, Star Crash, the evil Count Zarth Arn, ruler of the Haunted Stars. Played by Joe Spinelli, who is normally known for his roles in Italian slasher films. If ever there was an over-the-top movie villain, especially a science fiction villain, I mean, bad science fiction movies had their own qualities of villains, and Zarth Arn was just... the line delivery, the costuming, the look, which you may have noticed I occasionally emulate. There's a lot of Zarth Arn in the Uncle Drac designs. All of this makes him one of my favorite villains. But for a crappy science fiction movie, Zarth Arn was genuinely dangerous. He had an okay plan. It didn't always make sense, but he stuck to it. He was ruthless to a fault. It wasn't just letting his men shoot down the people attacking his base. Nah, he had to do the finishing shots himself. He had to walk up and look his enemies in the eye before he finished them. He was a thoroughly unredeemable, evil villain, right down to everything falling apart around him. He has lost. He's done. He's over. There is no question. He is about to die. And how does he handle it? Raising his arms in the air, spreading his cloak, and shouting his own name to the stars as his battle station explodes around him. That's a villain. It's one of the many things that make Star Crash enjoyable for me. Good villain goes a long way. Number 9. From the television show The Wild Wild West, Dr. Miguelito Loveless. I'm not going to mention much about the movie aside from the hell with the movie. The Wild Wild West was one of those shows I grew up with. It was a family tradition. You sit down around the television, and when that theme song started up, you were sitting in front of the television, glued to it. Everyone was watching. And the setting for the Wild Wild West is one I would dearly love to explore in role-playing games. That Old West and Secret Service agents, so you've got spies and cowboys and gadgets and pistols. And into that weirdness, they had to have an antagonist for James West and Artemis Gordon that would challenge them. And Robert Conrad and Ross Martin portrayed larger-than-life Western heroes and archetypes of things that I still emulate in role-playing games as a player to this day. You've got the Master of Disguise, and you've got the athletic gunslinger, and you know, fighters and pop-out guns and knives in the boots, and they were just monsters of effectiveness. What do you throw up against that? It was almost comical that they cast a midget as Dr. Miguelito Loveless. But he had so much menace and such joy in being evil. There was no question. He didn't have a higher purpose. He didn't have I'm going to try and save her. No, he was being evil. He was taking over. He had a will and a desire for those untamed lands of the West, and he was going to see it done no matter what. Using science, using the white elephant scientific conglomerate boob of the week, and he didn't care who he hurt. In fact, no, that's not correct. He cared that he hurt people that he didn't like. If his plan did not cause enough pain and mayhem, he would throw pain and mayhem into it. And his intellect and his sheer joyous ruthlessness made him a match for two of early television's biggest and hardiest heroes. The dichotomy of the size and physical stature only served to make how utterly, madly ruthless he was, and yet made for good television, great storytelling, and taught me a very valuable lesson about how important intellect was to a story, to a television show, to literature, to a villain. I like smart villains. Number 8. Coming in a little bit low on the list for some people's taste, I'm sure, but the reasons will become clear later. From Star Wars, arguably one of the most iconic villains in screen history, Darth Vader. Anakin Skywalker himself, the Dark Lord of the Sith. One, because he is iconic. Because that mask, the cloak, the costume, the height, the stature, the voice, the weapon, everything about Darth Vader. From the moment he stepped on screen, was destined to be legendary. A larger-than-life villain in a larger-than-life story. A hero can be defined by the opposition that they have to go through to achieve their goals as a hero. And Darth Vader defined opposition in science fiction. You know, there were villains Vader-ish before Darth Vader. Darth Vader-like villains were a staple of space opera and cinematic science fiction for as long as we've had science fiction and space movies. But it all got put together in such a magnificent package. Vader has a set of motivations that are pure and villainous. He follows the dark side. He obeys his emperor and seeks to rule through pain and fear. And if you've seen Rogue One, if you haven't seen Rogue One, see Rogue One. I'm going to spoil some stuff here. Spoilers for Rogue One's next couple of minutes. Last 5 minutes of Rogue One. You understand. Darth Vader isn't just your average movie villain. He's more than you've seen in other movies. Darth Vader's a friggin' monster. He is a movie monster of the ilk of Dracula or the werewolf or the mummy or Frankenstein. He is a beast. He is something to be feared. The sight of people running in terror from him, screaming because they have to face him, and dying while he effortlessly mows them down. He's a movie monster. The reason he is so low on this list is because Darth Vader is another villain's weapon. That is primarily what he is. He has a set of motivations that are based on other people's desires. He might have some motivations of his own if you dig into extended universe and whatnot and legends, but Darth Vader is another villain's sidearm, effectively. And we'll get to that villain. Yeah, he's on this list. Number 7. From the James Bond film Moonraker, Hugo Drax. I have some problems with some Bond villains. I will contend to my dying day that Auric Goldfinger is one of the worst villains in cinema history. Hugo Drax, on the other hand, there are a couple of Bond villains on this list. And I could have made a list of Bond villains, but I would have filled the list up with that, and it would have been a different thing. I'd just be ranking Bond villains, and I wanted to get some other villains in here. You know, Christopher Walken Zorin from View to a Kill, great villain. Hugo Drax. The style, the look, the calm. Oh, yeah, there are Bond villains who lose it. There are Bond villains who yell. Hugo Drax never yelled once. When everything crashed around his ears, he didn't yell. Quiet, calm, controlled. He had gotten all of his ducks in a row. He had a plan. He had a desire. And it's one of those, he wanted to make the world a better place because all the people were wrecking it. So get the people out of the way and the world can be good. again. Maybe some people that he chose could still be around. He had a friggin' space station and space shuttles, and he made James Bond go into space. That alone, I saw Moonraker when I was in my early teens, and it left a mark. Bond had cool gadgets in Moonraker, and there were space shuttles and explosions. But Hugo Drax had every advantage. He didn't start with every advantage. He worked his way up to every advantage. He was the kind of villain who started from nothing and made something just so he could see his villainous plan through to the end. He controlled portions of the world economy. He had a cloaked satellite in orbit. The fact that in my games there is a mark of villainy and wealth where you've got satellites that you own that are stocked with supermodels with PhDs, that's a nod to Xander Drax to Hugo Drax in Moonraker. Xander Drax is the villain from the Phantom, and not on the list. Hugo Drax, Moonraker. And went out like a villain should. It was going to be him or Bond, and it was Bond because it's Bond, but Bond had to poison him and throw him into space. It wasn't enough to just poison. Well, I could just leave you under exploding, crashing space station, but no, into space, right here. Yeah. It's a mark of a villain, not just it's a mark of the hero how great a villain they have to overcome, but it's a mark of the villain how far the hero has to go to just get rid of him, how much ire and determination goes into making the villain go away. Hugo Drax. Number 6. Gonna be a little complicated. From Batman, the Joker. There have been a lot of versions of the Joker. My first Joker was Cesar Romero in the Adam West series from the 70s. And still, to this day, kinda that one. But even over the years, all the incarnations of the Joker, with a couple of notable exceptions, not mentioning any names, Suicide Squad, but the Joker from The Killing Joke, the Joker from the 1970s animated filmation Batman, and the immortal performance of Mark Hamill as the voice of the Joker in Batman the Animated Series. The Joker was a villain for the sake of being a villain. And the terrifying thing about the Joker was it was all about the villainy. It was all about doing something to be a villain, but it had to be funny. The Joker is a reason I feel some people have a genuine fear of clowns. There's a lot of things that go into coulrophobia. You never know what a clown is thinking. Clowns are always engaged in violent activity, and they expect you to be to laugh at the fact that they're doing horrible things to each other and to the clown babies that they launch out of cannons and hit with hammers. Clowns are inherently a little terrifying, but the Joker takes that psychological phenomenon, takes that phobia, that very real phobia for very real reasons, and pumps it up to 11. Has to be funny to him. And the fact that he is so friggin' insane that you're never quite sure what's funny, that's half the thing of it. The other half is that you can look back on stuff afterwards, look back and go, that was actually kind of funny. The Joker invites us into a world of his own insanity. And we rarely know that we have been there until after the trip. There's a little bit of the Joker in all of us. A little bit of that, that was terrible, but as long as it was funny. And the fact that he has done so many heinous, horrible, terrible things. Oh my lord. The Killing Joke is one of my favorite comic books of all time, and it is monstrous in the depths that the Joker went to. But it also showed you how human he kind of was. And worse of all, it made you understand him just a little bit. And when you understand that insanity, for just a minute, he's a sympathetic villain. And that's a mark of a great villain. If they can be that much of a monster and still, somewhere in there, yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from. Number 5. From the film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the Bad, Sentenza, or Angel Eyes, as he was more commonly referred to. Played by Lee Van Cleef. There's a scene in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There are so many iconic scenes in that movie. I refer to Tuco coming out of the desert and building his gun a lot. Or the trio, the three-way standoff that defined gunfights in cinema forever afterwards. So many magnificent, iconic scenes. There's one that gets overlooked. A man is sitting with his family at home. Another day on the farm, and Lee Van Cleef shows up. Wearing black hat. He's the bad guy. Every cinematic trope that tells you someone is a bad guy is there. He seems to know the guy. Okay, invites him in. They invite him to their dinner table. As it's time for dinner, the wife leaves the room because she can sense business is about to occur. And Angel Eyes picks up a fork and starts eating off the guy's plate. Looking him in the eye. There's a minute where there's no dialogue. He's just eating the guy's food, looking at him. Little bit of a smile on his face. In that minute, you can see someone in total control. Total control of the situation he's in, total control of himself, total control of the man he is sitting across from. A man who has all the cards, all the confidence in the world to do whatever the hell he feels like. From a scene of eating the guy's food, looking him in the eye. Tells the guy he's here to fulfill a contract. He didn't pay some debts. Guy says, I will hire you to kill the guy who gave you the contract. Angel Eyes says, fine, I'll take that. I still got to kill you. I always see a contract through, but I'll kill him too. That's fine. Kills him. Kills the wife. Son comes in with a shotgun. Kills the son. Like it was Tuesday. Like it was just another day at the office. Like he was stamping papers or putting his signature on stuff or doing his taxes. Walks out. Takes the money for killing the guy who gave him the assignment. Walks out. And later in the movie, kills that guy. Always fulfills his contracts. That is a man who is dangerous and in ways that you don't see a lot You don't see competence as a dangerous trait like that. You see a competent character, you can admire them, and their competence makes you go, oh, well, that's someone that is reliable to do his job, or that's someone who's, they're going to assign him to something in the movie, and he's going to get it done because he's displayed competence. This is a character who displayed competence as the most dangerous characteristic he has. And it was very dangerous. I like me a competent villain, and that is the pinnacle of competence as a component of villainy. Angel Eyes. Number 4. From Batman. Son of the Demon, Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul has a lot in common with Hugo Drax. They have similar philosophy of the world. The world would be a wonderful place if it wasn't for all the friggin' people. And exploring Ra's al Ghul's past, as we didn't really get a chance to do with Hugo Drax, he's got reasons. He's had enough problems with people in his past that, yeah, you can understand him wanting to get rid of 99.99% of all of them. Had a Hugo Drax plan. In fact, I think his Ra's al Ghul's plan may have come first or alongside the Moonraker plan. Space station, kill everyone. Ra's al Ghul has so many villain qualities stacked up, it isn't funny. He's nigh unkillable. He has come back from the dead multiple times. Is the person who is the master of the arts that allow people to come back from the dead. His ability to resurrect himself and other characters is a key focal point in a large number of plot lines in DC Comics. Not just Batman comics, but lots of different ones. He has, because he has had this long life and this desire to see the earth set right without the pressure of humanity's evils, he has accumulated wealth and organizations and training, and you define a hero in part by the quality of the opposition that they go up against. Ra's al Ghul is a Batman villain, is one of the archetypal Batman villains. He's one of the few who knows who Batman is. Knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Didn't take him that long to find out. Admires Batman, and doesn't feel like rocking the boat. He's not going to tell anyone that Batman is Bruce Wayne. It's enough that Batman knows that Ra's al Ghul knows who he is. Occasionally, he has long intellectual conversations with Batman. Calls him the detective, not the Batman, not a villain, not a foe, but refers to him as detective. Understands what Batman's real skills and abilities are. Respects the intellect. Ra's al Ghul has gone to amazing lengths to see that his villainy gets properly accomplished. And it like villain who can and does regularly pursue his goals from beyond the grave is inherently terrifying. You get, like I said with Hugo Drax, how hard you have to go to kill the villain is one of those qualities of the villain and the story in which they appear, and Ra's al Ghul just keeps coming back in increasingly convoluted ways. There's a limit to how many times the Lazarus pit will work on someone, and he's hit that limit a couple of times, finds ways to reset it, and then finds other ways to extend his consciousness beyond that simple time limit of the flesh most people are heir to. A villain you just can't stop is inherently a terrifying villain. Number 3. The second Bond villain on the list. Francisco Scaramanga. The man with the golden gun, played by Christopher Lee in the film. Because a villain is the protagonist, or is the protagonist's antagonist, is the thing that makes the world difficult for the hero of the film. You look at Scaramanga, and Scaramanga was, by most metrics, Bond's opposite and equal number. He knew what his strengths were. He knew what his weaknesses were. And he had a plan. And it wasn't a world-ending plan. It wasn't a nihilistic, let's blow everything up plan. It could have been. He certainly had the capability and the mind power to put that together. Nah. He had a business plan. Pure and simple. He was going to be the owner of a monopoly, of one of the biggest energy monopolies that has ever existed on the planet. And if he had been able to accomplish these goals through legal means, it wouldn't have been a bad thing. I could have a Scaramanga solar generator on my roof right now, and it wouldn't be a problem. No. He used whatever means he felt was necessary to achieve this goal, and they were evil, they were villainous, they were murderous. He had a large amount of money invested in this, and he earned this money $1 million at a time. One golden bullet, $1 million. Name your target. And even this might not have stopped him. He was one of the world's most effective assassins ever. He did more long distance, one shot, one kill takedowns with a pistol than some military snipers have done in the field with Barrett Light 50s. Nah, he had one other quality that made him over the top as a villain. It was personal. He knew who Bond was. It's like, there's a man out there who has a kill ratio almost as high or higher than mine. And it wasn't that Bond was such a good agent or that he had such a high moral code. No, Bond had killed more people than he had, and it offended him. He obsessed over it. He had to have it out with Bond. Yeah, it was Scaramanga's mistress who put Bond on the trail, but that was because she knew that Scaramanga had this thing. He had a wax figure of Bond in his basement that he shot at from time to time. That's how much he really had to get that shot in. It wasn't a meeting in an exploding base or a intelligence style takedown. It wasn't one of Bond's usual finishes for a villain. It was a duel. It was back to back, 10 paces, turn and fire. And Scaramanga switched it up on him, moved into the island, used the terrain and devices that he knew he had set up to make this harder for Bond, took every advantage he could, but it was a duel. He saw himself as Bond's equal, and he damn near was. That's a villain. That's a villain right there. Ruthless, intelligent, cunning, super competent at his job, did one thing, but did it better than just about anyone else who ever lived. Yeah. There are some common themes here. Competence as a quality of villainy. Yeah. Motivations, drive. Number 2. Also from Star Wars. The man who had Vader in a holster, Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine's an interesting character. You don't see much of him in the Star Wars films. Not as much as you probably should. He's amazing as a villain. He's got his fingers in everything. He manipulates not just individuals and not just one or two groups. He manipulates galactic civilization. He manipulates the communication and the viewpoints and the politics of hundreds of planets. Takes down their order of monastic religious defenders, turns their military into his personal force of assassins, builds a military the likes of which the galaxy had not seen before and might not see again. If you look at the extended universe, and I do a lot, there are books about Palpatine and his rise to power and how he murdered his master Darth Plagueis, and some of Palpatine's limitations and what his full range of abilities are. There's a thing in the extended universe that's not probably going to be part of Legends. One of my least favorite things ever, the Yuzhang Vong War. I really dislike the Yuzhang Vong. I dislike them as a set of antagonists. I dislike the whole philosophy behind it. You did not need the Githyanki in Star Wars. You really just didn't. But there they are. But if you take that into some form of headcanon, Palpatine had a plan. He had to have an army. He had to have the Galactic Navy. He had to have the Star Destroyers because he foresaw the future and knew the Yuzhang Vong were coming. And had he manifested the empire that he had envisioned, he could have taken them. He would have. There would not have been all of this planets getting dropped on Chewbacca and what nonsense not, because the Imperial Navy would have been at a strength that could have given the Yuzhang Vong more than a run for their money. You take that element away, and Palpatine is just consolidating power for the sake of consolidating power, which is also just fine for a villain. He wanted the Jedi gone. Understandable. They were a threat to his power base, and he had the philosophy of a Sith, and that is diametrically opposed to what the Jedi were. There are endless commentaries about how what the Jedi were actually trying to do is evil, and how the Sith were just an oppositional force to this philosophy that was a perversion of its original basis, yada yada yada. Jedi is good, Sith bad. That's the core foundation of the cinematic literature, and Palpatine needed to get the Jedi out and wanted power. Unlimited power. Got it. You got it. It was flawed. His weapon was not single-edged. It had an edge on his side, too. And he fell to his hubris, which a good villain should. Literally fell. And a good villain does. He defeated himself in part because he gave all the power to someone that he kept in pain and rage. And that proved to be a mistake. A good villain can certainly be the undoing of themselves. If it takes the villain or the turning of a villain to bring a villain down, Darth Vader is also low on this list because he turned. He died Anakin Skywalker, looking at his son eye to eye. Luke saved him. Palpatine? Palpatine went down the reactor shaft and exploded a villain all the way to the last damn second. An extended universe came back a few times, so Ra's al Ghul, that implacable, unstoppable villain, clones and whatnot, and transference of his consciousness, because Sith alchemy and stuff, and got the same treatment just about every damn time. Powerful, implacable, capable, competent. I love Palpatine as a villain. He works very well. Number one, you want unstoppable, you want competent, you want implacable, you want someone whose opposition defines your hero. I've got to go with, from the first and theoretically only Highlander movie, the Kurgan. Victor Kruger, played by Clancy Brown. To tremendous effect. Oh my lord, he's a movie monster. He is an unstoppable, undeniable movie monster. A murder machine carving his way through the ages. An immortal, not unkillable, just immortal. Got a big sword, and he starts off in evil armor made out of skulls and raised brutally, never showing anything like an ounce of pity or mercy, never having a moment of weakness on screen. The Kurgan made Highlander a great movie. You know, Connor McLeod had to contend with that from the moment he became an immortal all the way through to the climax of the film, and it took hundreds of years to train up to the level where Connor McLeod was capable of dealing with this foe. And you didn't just see the Kurgan in his moments as he's murdering people, kidnapping the protagonist's girlfriend, or having the deep dark conversations. There's a wonderful scene in that movie where he assembles his sword. It impractical as crap. A sword that you made like that would get inherently weaker, and points of connection, yada yada. But the way he practiced with it, the way he handles it, that he does moves with that sword that have no combat application. Spinning it across his arms, getting the handle going while it's on its tip. And, you don't do that in combat, but he knew the balance of his blade to the micrometer. You don't need to know that much to use a sword. You really don't. But he did. Nothing stopped him. He performed terrible acts and made McLeod's life a horror. Killed his mentor, did horrible things to his woman before she died of old age, because immortals. And used all of that to poke at the hero, to make him lose his control and temper, because that's what a good villain does, is they keep their control and use that as leverage, as an advantage. If they can lose their control and you can keep theirs, you've already won the damn battle. Or as Murderface would have said, you see how he lost his control right there and I stayed perfectly calm? That's called being a dick. Villains are the master of being a dick. And use it in combat. They're not just dicks. To them, dickery is a martial art. Yeah, the Kurgan hits my number one spot just for that, for his sheer monstrousness, for his heinous acts of murder and depravity throughout the film, for how implacable a foe he was, mastery of the arts that he chose to master, but more than anything else, right there at the end, he knew he was beaten. He knew. Connor got the kill, got the slices in, and opened his belly up, and the fight wasn't quite over, but it was over. There was only one way that fight was going to end at that point in time, and the Kurgan did not scream about it, weep about it, cry about it. He did not have a moment of regret. This is what he had been working for his entire immortal life. He smiled and waggled his tongue and moved in for the kill, his or the other guy's. And that a villain who smiles and waggles his tongue at his last moment. Yeah, that's my number one. But this is my list. I can't just do a list of 10. I'm a gamer, so it's got to be a +1 top 10 list. So here's my +1 villain of all time. From the movie Smokey and the Bandit, Sheriff Buford T. Justice. Now, the character was played to incredible comedic effect by the master Jackie Gleason. And he can be seen as a comic character. He's funny as hell. I love the movie Smokey and the Bandit. I got to see it in the theater. They did a re-release in cinemas a month or so ago. I was able to take my son to see it on the big screen. Magnificent experience, because I got to share that with him. But I started thinking about the quality of villain that Buford T. Justice is. You think of horror movies, you think of Friday the 13th or Halloween. Those are some of the franchises that come to mind. They're franchises because you can't take those villains down. That's Michael Myers, that's Jason Voorhees, man. You can't kill them. You take them down, you put a machete through their head and drown them and put a chain around their neck and blow them up and freeze them and send them into space, and they still come back. Sheriff Buford T. Justice is a horror movie monster. He couldn't be stopped. Well, his car was a horror movie monster too, because no matter what happened to it, and horrible things happened to the car all the way through the movie, it's reduced to a portion of itself by the end, and it doesn't stop, and neither does he. I love Smokey and the Bandit. I love the Bandit as a character. As a hero, he has the easiest time of it of any hero in any movie ever, because everyone loves him. All he's got to do is pick up the CB and complain about a problem he's having, and people drive from miles around to get between him and the people who are opposing him. He's always got this barrier and this shield. He's got the fastest car in the movie, and even the cops, when he gets past them, are like, man, did you see that car? That guy's awesome. If he doesn't call for help, someone just shows up. He's driving into a trap. He gets, hey, breaker, hey, is Bandit out there? Because you're riding right into a road. But everyone's trying to help him. The Bandit isn't one hero. He is a community of people opposed to the oppression of people who don't want you to ship alcohol across straight lines. Nothing goes Buford's way. Everyone who wants to help the Bandit is getting between Buford Justice and his prey. The other police in the area going after Bandit give Buford no respect, and, nah, we'll handle this. You're out of your jurisdiction. I believe we can handle this here. You can go back to Texas. No, they can't handle it. But they're still, he doesn't have any backup. He's got no backup. He's got his incompetent son with him, who is holding him back, whose only useful act in the whole damn movie is to hold his hat on his head, and hold Buford's hat on his head when the top of their car gets taken off. If Sheriff Buford T. Justice was hunting the bandit down to bring him to justice for the sake of the rule of law, he would be the hero of the movie. He would be the protagonist having to overcome all of these obstacles because all the obstacles are in his path. Bandit and Snowman have a timetable and a helicopter to worry about. Aside from that, it's pretty much all on their side. Buford T. Justice could well be the protagonist of this movie if he was doing it for the rule of law, if he was doing it because he had a cause, he wanted to bring this person to justice, but that wasn't why he was doing a single damn bit of it. It wasn't even that he was genuinely worried for the woman that his son was going to marry who left him at the altar. It's not because he wanted to go make sure she was okay, recover her from this guy he thinks is genuinely kidnapped. Nah. Sheriff Buford T. Justice did everything that he did in the movie Smokey and the Bandit because his pride was hurt. And the more he pursued the bandit, the more his pride got hurt. He was in it to recover his personal sense of honor and pride. That's it. He was out of his jurisdiction. There was nothing that he could do once they'd crossed that state line legally. He wasn't after the bandit to bring him back. He was after the bandit to do terrible, terrible things to him. And then drag the bride back so that she could marry his son, whether she wanted to or not. Villain. Implacable, unstoppable movie monster villain. You put him, if he'd have had an indestructible car, you put him in Christine or Kit. If you move the action to a fantasy landscape or a space movie, and you have that character, sure, the racist, loudmouthed, overly prideful, southern Texas cop, you're giving him a lick of help. You'd have given him minions or an organization. You could transplant that character into another genre easily. And my pride is so great, I will not die until I've got you. He got 20 feet away at the end of the movie. And it was the end of the movie. And for all intents and purposes, he was beaten. He was so far from his jurisdiction, his son was gone off doing something else. And he had a moment of mutual respect with the hero. Hero took off, and he was after him. Hero had a brand new car. It was fresh. Brand new car and resources, and everyone still loved him, and he was more of a folk hero at that point than ever, so he was going to get all the support in his run at the end of the movie. So it was and Buford didn't stop. Not for a moment. Implacable movie monster villain. That's my list. What's yours? If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. Let me know what's your list of movie villains or villains in general. Who makes your top 10? Who's your plus one? Leave me a comment, please. Leave me a comment or hit me up on Facebook or something. I want to know who your villains are and why. I missed whole genres here. I didn't really have any villains from fantasy. I didn't talk about Sauron or Saruman and the folks from Krull or the Sword and the Sorcerer, because they're all good villains, but these are the ones that just jumped to the front of my head and knocked on my consciousness and said, talk about me. Again, my list is really short on villainesses. And, the Baroness from G.I. Joe and whatnot, excellent villains, but, again, these are the ones that jumped to the top of my head. I want to know what yours are. I want what your villains are and why. Leave me a comment. Tag me. Let me know. If you'd like to see me talk about something else or have an idea for a show you want me to see me do or have any questions or comments, leave me a comment. You'll enjoy leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to subscribe. Hit the little subscribe button and hit the little bell notifier next to the subscribe button so you get the notifications when the videos come out. And if you really dug the videos, want to consider helping out a little bit, feel free to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/DeCorum. Consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. Your eyes have not been deceiving you. Yeah, the colors have been changing. I got a new ceiling fan today, and it's got color-changing LED light bulbs in it because I kind of like to live my life in a disco. So if you like the lights, let me know. I could also change them out for white ones. It seems like that would be boring after this because I'm kind of digging how that looks. In the meantime, thank you very much for your attention. I am Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.